I started my research on teacher humor about 8 years ago, together with my colleague Markus Dresel. And now today I want to give you an overview of my research studies on teacher humor at secondary schools. And I want to show you some studies and a theoretical model of teacher humor where all my studies are based on. And I want to present results from a cross-sectional and from a longitudinal study and from an experimental study. And yes, the cross-sectional and longitudinal studies, they are still published, and the experimental study hopefully will be published in this year. Okay, so it's about laughing and learning, my talk, and as I told, the impact of teacher humor on students' emotions, their motivation, and their perceived instructional quality. So let's have a look. I want to give an introduction. And we know that teacher humor is related with socio-emotional, motivational, and cognitive dimensions of instruction and students' learning. And we know that teacher humor is a multidimensional construct. The precise impact of each form of teacher humor on the instructional dimensions has yet to be empirically clarified. Till now, there are only cross-sectional studies of the relation of teacher humor with aspects of instructional quality. So experimental studies are needed, or longitudinal studies, and this was the thing I found. And first, before I talk about my studies, I want to show you how we, or on which definition we refer when we talk about teacher humor. In a more general aspect, humor is a broad, multifaceted term that represents anything that people say or do that others perceive as funny and make them laugh, as well as the mental processes that go into both creating and perceiving such an amusing stimulus and the emotional response of mirth involved in the enjoyment of it. That's the definition of Martin and Ford. But furthermore, teacher humor involves playing with incongruities and conveys multiple meanings at once. And this is very important for our research, that we say there must be an incongruity. And teacher humor, in addition, it includes verbal and non-verbal elements, and it includes use of funny examples, wordplay, exaggerated descriptions and representations of funny, spontaneous anecdotes related to the topic and content-related cartoons or memes. So this is how we define teacher humor. And we are also talking about theory behind our research, and to clarify the effects of teacher humor has on students' emotions, we rely on instructional humor processing theory. And this is a suitable theoretical framework, and our research rely on this theory. And this theory assumes that students must first recognize and resolve incongruity in the teacher's humorous message to be perceived as humorous. And if the incongruity is not understood, students will be confused by the message. And when the teacher humor fits the context and culture of the educational setting, then it plays a facilitative role, while its irrelevant and inappropriate use hinders learning. Another aspect is, the theory suggests that a particular type of teacher humor leads to a facilitated learning process cognitively and effectively, yet not all types of humor in the classroom. So teacher humor without instructional relevance may divert attention from the course content, resulting in poorer information processing. So we see there are different types of teacher humor, including in this theory. And here we can see the figure from Wanzer and her colleagues. And this figure represents the theoretical assumed processes of teacher humor. And we can start with a humorous message on top. and then we follow the right way, the incongruity is recognized and it has to be resolved. And when the incongruous message is perceived as humor, then two possible ways are possible. Two ways are possible. It may lead to a positive effect if the humor is appropriate, or it may lead to a negative effect if the humor is inappropriate. Okay, so let's have a look at the different teacher humor types or humor forms. So we refer on the research studies from Freimeier and her colleagues, and we developed a questionnaire for students at secondary schools based on the questionnaire for university students from Freimeier, but they are younger at secondary schools. But we also found 4 different teacher humor forms. So there is an empirical evidence for these 4 different teacher humor types. So first, it is the cause-related teacher humor. This means this type of humor is used to explain or illustrate the relevant topics and the content. And this involves wordplay to make learning engaging and memorable, for example. Next, we have the cause-irrelevant teacher humor. This is unrelated to the teaching content and has no thematic connection to the current topic. For example, when the teacher tells a funny personal anecdote. The third type is the self-disparaging teacher humor, which sacrificing self-image mainly by exampling the self as the target of humor. So teachers poke fun at themselves in a lighthearted manner. For example, when the math teacher jokes about their own struggles with arithmetics. And last, the aggressive teacher humor types. This denigrates or ridicules others, especially students. For example, when a teacher makes fun about the intelligence of a student. So we rely in our research on these 4 different teacher humor types, and we will have a look if there are different effects of these types on for example, on instructional quality. So what is instructional quality? First, let's have a look. So in Germany, it's quite common and famous to rely on 3 basic dimensions for effective teaching. And so instructional quality itself is a broad spectrum of factors. For example, these are all the socio-emotional things, motivational, cognitive aspects. And so we have the 3 basic dimensions for effective teaching, which is student support, classroom management, and cognitive activation. And when we examine instructional quality, we rely on these 3 basic dimensions for effective teaching. So what is about student support? This draws from the self-determination theory of motivation with a primary emphasis on fostering an appreciative teacher-student relationship and interestingness. And the next type for good instructional quality is classroom management, which encompasses crucial elements such as the clarity of instruction and time on task. And another important aspect of good instructional quality is the cognitive activation, which means the mental stimulation of learners to engage in deeper mental investigation of the subject matter, which stimulates a deeper understanding. So these are the 3 main points which lead us through my research. So what do we know about previous empirical research according to these aspects? The relation of instructional quality and teacher humor types. We know that there is evidence that with humor, teachers can positively influence socio-emotional dimensions of instruction and subsequently the actual emotional experiences of their students. And teacher humor is related to specific motivational dimensions of instructions. This means characteristics of the instructional environment affecting students' learning motivation. And there is research which shows that interestingness should result in intrinsic motivation and enjoyment, because interest-based activities are experienced positively since they support basic needs as proposed by self-determination theory, and it promotes positive emotions. And there's also evidence that teacher humor will have an effect on cognitive dimensions of instruction. This means characteristics of the instructional environment affecting students' information processing, for example, the clarity of instruction. And another work here from Petty and Kakiopo and Banzer says that humorous explanations or examples of the learning object can promote elaboration. So based on this, on these previous results, these results led us to develop a model of teacher humor effects, and this theorized model is the base of all of my research, and I examined these assumptions in different studies. So this is a very important slide. So we can see the 4 different teacher humor types on the left hand, and in the middle we can see the different aspects of instructions, and on the right hand side we can see the aspects of student learning. And we assume that the more appropriate types of teacher humor, the unrelated, the self-disparaging, and the humor related to course material, as they are affiliative humor types, they will have positive effects on the perception of the instructional dimensions. And furthermore, these positive effects will have a positive effect on student learning aspects. And we assume that the aggressive teacher humor will have a negative effect on the perception of the instructional dimensions. And furthermore, this will have a negative effect on student learning. And now we have to look if this theoretical model can be proved. And I want to take you with me to the next, to one of my studies. So we examined here in this study the relevance of perceived teacher humor types for instruction and student learning. It was a cross-sectional study in secondary school with 985 students from grade 10 out of 45 classes, and the mean age was about 15 years. And so we had a nested data structure, and we for that we did multi-level regression analysis to respect the hierarchical structure of the data. And so we ask in this study for the relation of teacher humor with aspects of instructional quality and students' motivation and learning. Okay, I just swip to the results. So here we see the 2-level regression analysis to predict the instructional dimensions. So the different instructional dimensions here, teacher-student relationship, interestingness, and clarity, which are aspects of the 3 basic dimensions of good instructional quality, which I have shown you before. These are our dependent variables, and we see that our 4 different teacher humor types are our predictors. And we have on level 2, the teacher level. This means we have the aggregated class means on this level, and we have the student level, which represent the individual ratings of the students. So, but the teacher level, so the aggregated class mean what is perceived in the class as a whole, the common experience is the more important one. And so we can see that on the teacher level, the unrelated humor to course material is a negative predictor for the interestingness and for the clarity, whereas the related teacher humor is through on teacher level and on student level, a positive predictor for these three instructional dimensions. Self-disparaging teacher humor on both levels is a positive predictor for teacher-student relationship. And we see that the aggressive teacher humor is a negative predictor for, on both levels, for the teacher-student relationship. In the next step, we addressed the mediation assumptions, and so we conducted also two-level mediation tests based on products of the relevant regression coefficients. And we see here in these results, I only show the significant results and not the not significant mediations. So this figure would be too big, but you can see it in the article. So we see here, we also have the teacher level and the student level, and we can see here on the teacher level that the related human to course material is a positive predictor for the interestingness, and this is positive predicts intrinsic motivation and the elaboration of students. And we see that this is fully mediated. So this is one proof for our theoretical model that there is a relation from teacher humor to student learning, but it is mediated over the perceived instructional dimensions. And we see that the unrelated humor is a negative predictor and is so negatively for has a negative effect on intrinsic motivation and elaboration. And we see on the student level that the course-related humor is also mediated over teacher-student relationship and interestingness to the intrinsic motivation elaboration, and the aggressive teacher humor has a negative mediation over teacher-student relationship and intrinsic motivation. So the students who perceive the aggressive teacher humor, they feel less connected with the teacher, so the teacher-student relationship is worse, and they perceive less intrinsic motivation. They are not so motivated than the other students who perceive related humor. Okay, so we see that the study was cross-sectional, that's a limitation, but we see that different teacher humor forms show different relations with student learning. And the course-related teacher humor mediates the effect of the perceived interestingness of instruction and teacher-student relationship on learning and motivation. And the aggressive teacher humor was a negative predictor for the teacher-student relationship. So in the next step, we examined the effects of teacher humor formed in a longitudinal study, and we put an eye on students' emotions now. And the overall purpose of this study was to examine the effects of 4 types of teacher humor as a specific teaching behavior transporting different information concerning control and value. And we look here on the development of students' positive and negative emotions in the classroom. And we had 668 German secondary students with mean age about 13 years old from 41 classrooms. And students were out of grade 6 till grade 10. So a lot of grades in this study. And we have different classes here in this study. The students were assessed in the context of English, of mathematics, and of history classes, each about 32%. Okay, and what do we had 2 measurement points at the beginning of the school year and in the middle of the school year. And we see that we also did multi-level analysis because due to the hierarchical structure of the data, so students are nested in classes, and so we calculated multi-level models using HLM just for information, and we did t-tests for one sample, and this indicated that mean changes in the assessed emotions were significant. Enjoyment and this showed that enjoyment decreased over time, while boredom and anger increased over time. And in the next step, we want to have we examined if if these changes are different in the different classes. And so we used a multi-level model, including all 3 emotions from time 2. You can see this in the table on the left-hand side. So we have the emotions enjoyment, boredom, and anger at time 2. And all 3 emotions in time 1 are the predictor variables on the student level. And our results indicate that all 3 emotions developed significantly differently in different classes. We can see this on the variance coefficients here, variance between classes. So this is significant. And so we have different changes in different classes, and this is a necessary precondition for doing multi-level analysis. And this then we looked for the changes from time 1 to time 2 in longitudinal multi-level analysis, and we want to predict the student emotions dependently from the different teacher humor types. So what can we see here? Above the student level, and we can see that the aggressive humor is a negative predictor, has a negative effect on the enjoyment and a positive effect on boredom and anger. Means with aggressive teacher humor, the students perceive less enjoyment and more boredom and more anger. And let's have a look at the classroom level, which is most important level here, because here are the aggregated means from the class. And we see that the humor, which is related to the course content, has a positive effect on the development of enjoyment, and it predicts negatively the boredom and anger, which means with more humor related to the course content, the students perceive less boredom and less anger. So this was the first longitudinal study which examined effects on students' emotions independent of the teacher humor type. I want to sum it up, what we found here. So teachers who use more course-related humor weaken the decrease in the enjoyment and weaken the increases in boredom and anger students experience over the time. And our findings clearly indicate that only the course-related humor is effective, and the aggressive humor should definitely be avoided. So aggressive humor is perceived as negative, offensive, and not at all amusing by the recipient, and leads to anger and boredom. We found no longitudinal effects either for self-disparaging or course-unrelated teacher humor. No effects here. So this means being funny is not a sufficient criterion for reducing negative emotions. Okay, so this are the studies at secondary school, cross-section and longitudinal studies. And now I want to show you our latest experimental study, where we also test the effects of our theoretical model. So what are our research questions here? So this experimental study aims to investigate whether the course-related humor can positively impact the perception of instructional quality. Till now, we only know there is a relation, but we do not know if there is really an impact of instructional quality. And on knowledge acquisition. Yes, we know that students have to learn, and we also want to know the other aspects of learning, student learning. This is emotion and motivation of students. So here are our hypotheses. So the use of course-related, unrelated, and self-disparaging teacher humor, like I show you in my model, in the class leads to better perception of all these instructional dimensions, and the use of aggressive teacher humor or no use of humor. We had a control group, has no effects or negative effects. And hypothesis 2, the use of course-related teacher humor leads to more clarity, more time on task, and higher cognitive activation than the other humorous conditions and the control group. And in our last hypothesis, we tested the assumption if the use of course-related or aggressive teacher humor leads to increased knowledge acquisition, more enjoyment, and if aggressive, more negative emotions among students compared to the other teacher humor forms. Now let's have a look at this experimental study. I want to show you what we did. We developed an experimental approach with videotyped and parallelized teaching units that slowly varied in terms of the 4 teacher humor forms. And a male actor assumed the teacher role, and the content across the different versions was entirely standardized. In all video versions, the same teacher was a male actor, and we had the same content in all video versions. But the versions differentiated between the teacher humor in the videos. And this approach was implemented in 2 experiments, targeting 1 teaching experts, namely the teachers themselves. So we asked teachers to watch the video and to evaluate the instructional quality of the video. And we had the student perceptions. So we asked students to watch the video and to evaluate the teacher in the video and to answer some questions according to knowledge acquisition. So we had a consistent portrayal of the same teacher across all video conditions, and each student viewed a videotaped teaching unit featuring a male teacher, and the topic in the video was out of a geography class. It was about plastic waste in the sea, and the student and the teacher saw a teacher interacting with students for approximately 18 minutes each video. And the participants observed the unit and assessed its instructional quality and the students, their emotion and motivation. And by conducting experiments involving both teaching experts and students, we aim to examine the effects of teacher humor and derive internally valid conclusions about its causal impact. So the sample in experiment 1, where the teachers, we had 203 teachers, 109 female, with the age from 27 to 74. Most of them were born in Germany, and we randomly assigned them to the different experimental conditions. We contacted them via email, and when they sent us their agreement to participate, we sent them a video condition. And some of them, after the agreement, they decided not to participate. So this is why we have different population in the different conditions. Yes, and so you see we have the 4 conditions and the control conditions. And the experiment 2, there we had the 334 students from grade 10, the German secondary schools, 154 of them were female from the age 14 to 18, and most of them were born in Germany. And here we also randomized them to the different video conditions. And here it better works because we've been in the class. And so the instruments in both experiments were, we asked for the teachers and students' perceptions of teacher humor, and we asked for teachers and students' perceptions of instructional quality. You can see here the different constructs. And for students, we also ask for the knowledge acquisition, emotion, and emotion. And the knowledge acquisition was a test before they watched the video, and at the end of the questionnaire, they had the same questions. Okay, now let's have a look at the results. Here we have the manipulation check for the teachers. So we looked if they the manipulation worked. We can see here that the manipulation check revealed strong effects of the experimental manipulation. So yes, we had the same humor we had with the right humor form in each condition. And now here are the effects of with the teachers. So we see that the different colors represent the different teacher humor forms. And so we see that in the related humor condition, the teacher-student relationship was evaluated better than in all other conditions, and the interestingness of the related humor condition was evaluated better than in all other conditions. So according to the clarity, related humor was better than the unrelated humor condition and better than the aggressive humor condition, but there was no effect between related and control group. For the time on task, the related humor condition was better than all other humor conditions, but not better than the control group. And cognitive activation, we see the teachers evaluated the related humor better than the unrelated and better than the aggressive humor condition. Now let's have a look at the students experiment. Also here the results show that the manipulation of humor types was successful also with the students. And here are our results of the effects. Like the teachers, the students evaluated teacher-student relationship better in the related humor condition than in all other conditions. The interestingness better in the related humor condition than in all other conditions except for the unrelated humor. Clarity was in the related humor condition better than in the aggressive and in the self-dispersion humor. And the time on task, like the teachers evaluated it was better in the related humor condition than in all other humor conditions. And the cognitive activation of the related humor condition was only better than in the self-dispersion humor condition. So there's a little difference between teachers and students evaluations, but not a lot. So what about the experience with students on their perceived emotion and motivation? We see that in the related humor condition, there was more enjoyment and there was less boredom. And in the aggressive humor, there was more anger and more anxiety than in all other conditions. And we had more intrinsic motivation in the related humor condition than in all other conditions. Let's have a look at the prior knowledge. There was a test before watching the video and at the end of the questionnaire, and the prior knowledge significantly predicted the knowledge acquisition. That is fine, but the knowledge acquisition shows no significant differences in the group means. So we had no effect on knowledge acquisition. Okay, so let's discuss the experimental results, and then I come to the end. So there is a causal effect of course-related humor on perception of instructional dimensions. I could show you that this type of humor positively affected the perception of teacher-student relationships by both teachers and students. There is a higher level of interestingness, and there is more clarity than in the aggressive condition. And it is very important that course-related teacher humor is not perceived as a waste of time by teachers and students. So effective classroom humor must be joyful, respectful, and conducive to fostering a friendly climate. And we see course-related humor serves as a tool to support effective teaching components and classroom management. And the course-related humor did not lead to greater cognitive activation compared to the control group, what we thought. But the participating students, they were passive in front of their computer screens and not personally involved in the class. And future studies have to be conducted in natural environments, and they should further examine the effects of course-related humor and cognitive activation. There's a lot more to do. And the aggressive humor led to a poor perception of all cognitive instructional dimensions in teachers' and students' perspectives, and it really should be avoided in the classroom. So students in the course-related humor condition did not outperform students in the other conditions. That was the effect, the missing effect of the knowledge acquisition. But we see that teachers can use humor strategically to influence different aspects of instruction, and recognizing these dimensions helps tailor humor effectively in the classroom. Though this was a short look into my research, and thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please.
Right. Yeah, let's give a huge round of applause. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Sonja Bieg. Do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience? Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's one question on Zoom, right? So, yeah, so with a comparison of your results on the German participants, in which like course-related humor is an effective tool for instructional quality, and the challenges that Professor Bannes raised, that research is overwhelmingly Western and Chinese and Thai, studies showing that instructional humor is ineffective. So how necessary is it to do a cross-cultural study about teacher humor? So that's the first question.
Yes, thank you for this question. Yes, I think I was in April in Philadelphia on the ARA conference, and there was almost the same question. And I think it would be necessary to replicate our results. So our results are from Germany with German secondary school students, and we do not know at the moment if these results could be replicated in other cultures. And at the moment, we are planning a cross-cultural study. And so this is the next step we do. And at the moment, we also do a longitudinal study and in a natural context, not in an experiment. And we will have our results in September, October. And but we also start in autumn with a cross-cultural study. And if anybody here who wants to join us and say, yes, me and my country, we want to participate in this cross-cultural study, feel welcome to contact me. And we are still in the planning, and we have a lot of people from Asia and South America and different countries from Europe, but we need more. So that's the next step to replicate all those results. Yes.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And there's another question. So do you think that qualitative studies with open-ended questions and classroom observations will bring new insights for research on teacher humor?
Yes, what we did in our current longitudinal studies, we had open questions, qualitative questions, and we asked teachers and students, how important is humor for you, and what is more important than teacher humor in class? And we have different insights in teacher humor from students and teachers, and the manuscript is almost ready, almost finished, and will be published soon. And what we also did in this longitudinal studies is observations. So you can read a lot from us in future. So we do this all, and we have the observation in addition to the teacher and student questionnaire. So we need this, yes, to have a more objective sight on teacher humor and not only the student and teacher perspective.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Right. So we have a question from Professor Bannis. Oh, right. Yeah. So we've got one question there.
Yes, it's just about the humor that was used for the experiment. Is it humor in one-sided speaking from the teacher, like humor in delivering the lecture, or was it humor in interactive like discussion?
Yes, yes. So we had the 4 different types, and it was different as in the course-related humor condition. One humor scene was only a cartoon, a humorous cartoon about waste in the sea. And the other one was an interactive element. And for the unrelated condition, this was also the teacher told a joke, and he told a personal funny anecdote. And for the aggressive condition, yes, it was an interactive humor, so the teacher ridicules about students. And for the self-disparaging, yes, the teacher himself, he was the target of humor. So it depends on the teacher humor type, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have another question from Professor Bannis from the University of Oklahoma.
Hi, yes. I've thought a lot about aggressive humor, and I obviously clearly agree that targeting students in an aggressive manner is maladaptive. I can't imagine anyone would argue otherwise. But if you look at like Rod Martin's work with the humor questionnaire scale, so he originally postulated that aggressive humor would be maladaptive, but that's not what his results bore out, right? Because aggressiveness targeting a valid target isn't necessarily problematic. And so I was just thinking, so I taught a class on conspiracy theories this year, and we ended up engaging in quite a bit of mockery of conspiracy theorists, whether, you know, be it fallacious logic, logical fallacies, or just how, you know, maladaptive the outcomes of their rhetoric are. And so do you think perhaps the conceptualization of aggressiveness in the future could be more multifaceted?
Yes, that's an interesting topic, because we had, I think it was 4 items asking for the aggressive humor, and it's all targeting the students in a aggressive way. Yes, that like aggressive humor. The teacher makes fun about the intelligence or the clothing or something like that. But maybe aggressive humor is more multifaceted, as you said. Maybe we can find some items more ironical, and not so sarcastic. And so maybe we have a good and a negative aggressive humor. And I think it depends on the student's age. But students tell me also at my university college, they told me, yes, but sometimes when they are old enough and there is a good teacher-student relationship, and the teacher is a little bit of ironic, so that's not a problem. And so because they like their teacher, and so he can tease them a little bit. So formally that's aggressive, but they don't perceive it as aggressive. And maybe we should try to measure this point too. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.